Vincent Kane didn't believe in fate, but standing in his Manhattan penthouse at midnight with a bruise darkening his jaw, he wondered if destiny had finally caught up with him. His new housekeeper, Maria Santos, stood before him with trembling hands raised in warning. "Don't make a sound. She's listening." In Vincent's world, silence meant power. He commanded New York's most ruthless crime families with a word, ended conflicts with a glance, and built an empire where loyalty was bought with blood. Yet something in this housekeeper's desperate eyes, a mixture of terror and steeled determination, made him freeze mid-step. "What the hell is happening in my own home?" His voice dropped to a lethal whisper. Maria grabbed his wrist with surprising force, pulling him toward the shadows beside his grand piano. "If you confront her now, everything she's planned will accelerate. Trust me." 60 seconds. No one touched Vincent Kane without permission. Not his soldiers, not his business partners, not even Isabelle DeLuca, his fiancée, daughter of New York's most powerful crime lord. Their engagement was a merger, a treaty written in champagne and signed with diamond rings. But Maria spoke his first name like a lifeline. From deeper in the penthouse, Vincent heard something that turned his blood to ice. A child's voice. Trembling. Afraid. His daughter. Maria's hand clamped over his mouth before he could react. "She'll hear you. Trust me. 1 minute. Please." If this story grips something deep inside you, something unspoken and raw, please subscribe to our channel right now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the stories that matter. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because every voice, every connection, makes this community stronger. Now, let's continue. Vincent had left his office early for the first time in months, abandoning a meeting with the Rossi family to surprise his daughter on her 8th birthday. The guilt of missing her last 3 birthdays weighed heavier than any business decision he'd ever made. He'd built his empire on precision. Every move calculated, every risk measured, every enemy neutralized before they became a threat. But tonight, walking through his own front door at an unexpected hour, Vincent Kane, the man who controlled half of New York's underworld, discovered he'd been blind to the enemy living under his own roof. Maria positioned him behind a marble column in the hallway. Through the crack in the doorway, Vincent saw his daughter Lily kneeling on an antique Persian rug. Her small shoulders shook with silent sobs. His son, 9-year-old Marcus, stood beside her like a soldier at attention, fists clenched at his sides. And towering over them both, pacing in designer stilettos, was Isabelle DeLuca. His fiancée. The woman he was supposed to marry in 3 weeks. The alliance that would unite the Kane and DeLuca families and make them unstoppable. "Crying won't change reality, Lily." Isabelle's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "Your father isn't here. He's never here when it matters. And when he is here, he's too soft to do what's necessary." Vincent's vision blurred red. Every instinct screamed at him to burst through that door, to put himself between Isabelle and his children, to end this nightmare with his bare hands. Weak children become liabilities. Isabelle continued, her tone clinical and cold. "In my family, we eliminate liabilities before they become problems. You should be grateful, I'm teaching you discipline. Preparing you for the real world." She crouched to Lily's eye level, her perfectly manicured hand gripping the child's chin. "Now tell me what you are." Lily's voice came out in a broken whisper. "Worthless." The word detonated in Vincent's chest like a grenade. His hand moved toward the Glock holstered beneath his jacket, muscle memory taking over. He would kill Isabelle. Right now. No hesitation. But Maria's grip was iron. She pressed her entire body against him, pinning him to the wall with strength that shouldn't have been possible for someone her size. "Not yet," she breathed against his ear. "If you go in there now, she'll twist everything. She'll threaten to leave and take the DeLuca alliance with her. She'll make you the monster. She's been planning for this exact reaction. Vincent knew she was right. He knew the game. The engagement to Isabelle was never about love, it was strategy, power consolidation, the kind of merger that prevented wars and secured territories. But his child, his own flesh and blood, was on her knees calling herself worthless. Maria pulled out her phone, the screen glowing in the darkness. "You need to see this before you do anything." She pressed play. The video appeared, clearly filmed from a hidden camera. Vincent recognized his own living room. He recognized his son being dragged by his hair across marble floors by Isabelle. Marcus made no sound, no crying, no screaming. Just gritted teeth and silent endurance, like a small warrior who'd learned that noise brought worse punishment. The next video showed Lily sitting in a corner. Isabelle approached without warning and struck the 6-year-old girl across the face with an open palm. The crack echoed like a gunshot. Lily stumbled but didn't cry out. Then Isabelle's voice, cold enough to freeze hell itself, "Your mother was weak too. That's why she's dead." The screen went dark. Vincent realized his hands were shaking. Not from fear. From rage so pure it threatened to consume everything in its path. His fingers found the grip of his Glock, that familiar way to promise of violence. Maria placed her hand on his arm, not restraining this time, but grounding him. 18 recordings like this, she said steadily. For months I've been watching. She only does it when you're away. When you're handling business at the ports, attending those late-night meetings, everywhere your empire needs you. 4 months. Vincent's voice came out like gravel. 120 days. Your children endured hell, Maria said quietly, while you believed they were safe. Vincent looked at this woman, this housekeeper he'd barely noticed since she'd started 4 months ago. "Why?" he demanded. "Why did you watch? Why did you record? Who are you?" Maria met his gaze without flinching. "Someone who's been waiting for you to come home early. Someone who will tell you the truth. But not now. Right now, you need to stay silent and watch. Because what you just saw..." She paused. "That's only the beginning." Before Vincent could demand more answers, a phone rang from the playroom. The cheerful ringtone felt obscene against the horror he'd just witnessed. Maria tightened her grip on his arm, pulling him deeper into the shadows. Through the doorway, they watched Isabelle pull out her phone, glance at the screen, then raise a finger to silence the children with a look that promised consequences. She stepped toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, her back to Marcus and Lily. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but Vincent had spent 15 years in this business. He knew how to hear confessions in crowded rooms, how to catch betrayal in a whisper. And now those same instincts captured every word of a conversation Isabelle believed no one could hear. "Tomorrow night," Isabelle said softly, one hand smoothing her perfectly styled hair. "The documents are ready." Vincent held his breath. He suspects nothing. A quiet laugh escaped her red lips, the laugh of someone holding all the cards. "The life insurance policy went through last week. $5 million, with me as sole beneficiary." Vincent's blood turned to ice. "And the trust fund modifications?" Isabelle paused, listening. "Perfect. Once he signs those papers tomorrow, everything transfers to me in the event of his unfortunate accident." Maria stood motionless beside Vincent, but he could feel the tension radiating from her like electricity. "The children?" Isabelle's voice took on an edge. "They won't be a problem much longer. The boarding school in Switzerland is already arranged. Remote enough that they'll be out of sight. Out of mind." She ended the call and slipped the phone into her pocket with practiced grace. When she turned back to the children, that gentle smile bloomed on her lips, the smile Vincent had once believed was affection. Now he saw it for what it truly was, a predator's mask. "Bedtime," Isabelle announced sweetly. She approached Marcus and Lily, placing a hand on each child's shoulder in what might look tender to an observer. But Vincent saw her fingers dig in, saw her blood-red nails pressing into their thin pajamas. "Remember," Isabelle whispered, still smiling. "If you tell your father anything at all, I'll make sure you never see him again. There are schools very far away. Places where it takes 2 days by plane to reach. Where no one knows who you are. Where you'll be completely alone." She tilted her head, the smile never wavering. "Do you understand?" Marcus nodded first. A mechanical, lifeless nod. Then Lily, tears still wet on her cheeks, nodded too. "Good children." Isabelle straightened up, brushing off her hands. "Now go." The children walked away, their small hands finding each other in the darkness, gripping tight as if afraid to let go. Vincent watched their silhouettes disappear down the hallway, and something inside him shattered completely. Not his heart, that had hardened years ago in this business. It was his certainty. The belief that no matter who he was or what he did, at least his children were safe in their own home. As Marcus and Lily passed the column where Vincent hid, his son's head turned. Perhaps instinct. Perhaps the intuition of a child who'd learned to stay alert. But in that moment, the 9-year-old boy's eyes met his father's gaze. Vincent saw everything in those eyes. Pain buried beneath silence. Fear that had become routine. Hope, but not the bright hope of childhood. This was exhausted hope. Hope that had been crushed too many times to fully believe anymore. Vincent wanted to step out. Wanted to grab his son, hold him, promise that everything would be okay. But before he could move, Marcus did something that destroyed Vincent completely. The boy didn't call out. Didn't run to his father. Didn't cry or reach for help. Instead, Marcus gripped his sister's hand tighter, turned his face forward, and kept walking as if he'd seen nothing at all. 9 years old. His son was 9 years old. But the boy had already learned the cruelest lesson this world had to teach: silence means survival. Reaction means danger. Hope is a luxury you can't afford. Marcus had seen his father, recognized salvation standing just steps away, and still chose to walk into darkness. Because he knew one sound, one wrong move, could make everything worse. His son had learned to trust no one. Not even his own father. That look, that brief moment when father and son's eyes met and parted, broke something in Vincent that no bullet, no blade, no torture had ever reached. Maria touched his elbow gently. "She checks on them at 2 a.m., she whispered urgently. "Every night. To make sure they haven't tried to call anyone. We have 90 minutes. Vincent swallowed hard, his throat raw. 90 minutes for what? Maria looked straight into his eyes. To get them somewhere safe. To understand what those documents are. To figure out why your children won't be a problem after tomorrow night. 90 minutes. 5,400 seconds to save the children he'd failed to protect for 4 months. Vincent looked toward the bedroom where Marcus and Lily lay in darkness, perhaps pretending to sleep, perhaps praying for rescue. "Lead the way," he said to Maria. "I won't waste another second." Before Vincent could follow Maria, a scream tore through the penthouse. Lily's scream, high, desperate, the sound of pure terror. Vincent didn't think. Didn't calculate. Didn't care if Isabelle heard. He ran. 15 years of tactical training, of moving through dangerous situations with precision, all of it vanished. He was just a father whose daughter was screaming, and nothing else mattered. He reached the children's bedroom in seconds, his shoulder slamming into the doorframe as he rushed in too fast. But the screaming had stopped. In its place was something worse, muffled sobbing. The sound of a child who'd learned to suffer silently. In the faint moonlight through the curtains, Vincent saw Marcus sitting on Lily's bed. The 9-year-old boy had one hand over his sister's mouth while his other arm wrapped around her shoulders, trying to hold her together. The boy was doing the work adults should do, protecting his sister, keeping her quiet, shielding her from the monster sleeping nearby. When Marcus looked up and saw his father in the doorway, the boy's face crumbled. Not from fear or pain, but from conflicting emotions tearing him apart, relief and terror, hope and despair. "Nightmare, Papa," Marcus said, voice trembling but fighting for control. He removed his hand from Lily's mouth, quickly wiping tears from her cheeks. "Just a nightmare. We're fine." 9 years old. His son was 9 years old and had already learned to use lies as shields. Vincent stepped into the room and closed the door. He walked to the bed, knelt before his children, and placed himself at their eye level, something he'd never done before. In his world, people knelt before him. "I know," he said, voice so choked he barely recognized it. "I saw everything. I heard everything." He raised his hands, touching Marcus's cheek, then Lily's, wiping away tears. "And I swear on your mother's memory, she will never hurt you again. Never." Lily looked up, her eyes enormous and red from crying. "You know about Miss Isabelle?" Her voice was tiny, afraid that speaking louder would make everything real. "I know everything, Princess," Vincent whispered, his throat tight with pain. "I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry I didn't know sooner." Marcus remained frozen. "Do you promise?" the boy asked, voice shaking. She said if we told you, she'd send us away to schools really far away, where you could never find us." Rage ignited in Vincent's chest, but he forced it down. This wasn't the time for anger. This was the time for the gentleness these children had been denied for months. "Look at me," he said, voice solid as steel. "You are not worthless. Do you hear me? You are not weak. You are not a burden. You are my children, my blood. The only thing in this world that truly matters." He pulled both children into his arms, holding them tight. "And no one, do you hear me? No one in this world can take you from me. You're mine, and no one takes what's mine." In his arms, the small bodies trembled. Then Marcus cried. For the first time in months, the boy allowed himself to truly cry, not muffled, not suppressed. Lily cried with him, sobs breaking free like water through a cracked dam. Vincent held his children tight, making a promise to himself, even if he had to burn all of New York to the ground, he would keep this vow. A soft knock interrupted their reunion. Maria slipped into the room like a ghost, her face tense. "Light just turned on in Isabelle's bedroom," she said calmly. "She may have heard the scream. We need to move now." Vincent stood, one hand on Marcus's shoulder, the other holding Lily's hand. "Where?" "Isabelle controls every exit." "Not every exit," Maria replied, a thin smile crossing her lips. "Follow me." They left the bedroom in silence. Maria stopped before a decorative wooden panel at the dead end of the service hallway. "Impossible," Vincent whispered. "My security team swept this penthouse. Thermal scanners, sonar, everything. Your men were looking for heat signatures and electronic bugs," Maria replied, fingers tracing the panel's edge. "They weren't looking for empty space." She pressed a sequence of carved roses, not a button, but a mechanical latch hidden in the design. With a soft click, the wall swung inward like a vault door. "Prohibition era," she explained. "A smuggler's passage lined with lead and concrete. Invisible to thermal scans." Vincent stared into the darkness. "How did you find this when my best men didn't?" "I measured," Maria said simply, stepping into the void. "The hallway is 5 feet shorter on the inside than the blueprints say it should be. Math doesn't lie." Vincent looked at her, really looked at her. He didn't ask why a housekeeper would measure architectural dimensions. He was beginning to understand that Maria Santos was far more dangerous than he'd imagined. They moved through the narrow passage, dust thick on the walls but the floor clean. Someone had been using this route regularly. Marcus gripped his father's hand. Lily was carried in Vincent's arms, her head resting on his shoulder. Maria stopped before an old door, paint peeling and hinges rusted. But when she pushed it open, what lay inside made Vincent freeze. This wasn't a forgotten room. This was a surveillance center. 3 computer monitors displayed camera feeds from throughout the penthouse: living room, dining room, children's playroom, even the master bedroom where Isabelle now stood, tense, staring at the door. Beside the monitors sat an open laptop with dozens of file folders. Stacks of documents lined shelves, each labeled with dates. And beneath a sheet draped over a chair, Vincent recognized the shape of a Glock 19. "Insurance," Maria said, closing the door behind them. "Everything Isabelle has done over 4 months. Every word, every action, every threat. All recorded." Vincent set Lily down in the chair. She'd fallen asleep from exhaustion. Marcus stood beside his sister, one hand on her shoulder, even in sleep, protecting her. Vincent turned to Maria with entirely different eyes. No longer looking at a servant, but trying to solve a dangerous puzzle. "You're not a housekeeper," he said. "Not a question. Who are you really?" Maria didn't answer immediately. She walked to the desk, fingers brushing over the files as if touching painful memories. When she turned back, there was something in her eyes Vincent recognized: pain. The kind that transforms into purpose. "I'm someone who made a promise to a woman who died," Maria replied, voice dropping low. "Someone who's been waiting for you to come home early for 4 months. Waiting for the moment you'd see the truth with your own eyes." Vincent's heart clenched. "My wife. Sarah." The name escaped him like both prayer and curse. Sarah, the woman he'd loved, who'd died in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving him with 2 children and a shattered heart. Maria shook her head, but not in complete denial. "Not exactly," she said bitterly. "But your children aren't the only ones Isabelle DeLuca has destroyed. She took the most important person in my life. And I came here to make sure she pays for everything." Maria turned to the laptop, fingers gliding across the keyboard with practiced fluency. A folder opened, and on the screen appeared a photograph of a young woman. Vincent stared at the face, a feeling of familiarity creeping through him. The eyes in the photo resembled Maria's, the same deep brown, but there was something different. Softer. Warmer. As if this woman saw the world through the eyes of someone who believed in goodness, while Maria saw it through the eyes of someone who'd lost that faith. "Jessica Santos," Maria said, voice falling as she spoke the name. "My sister. She worked as your personal assistant 3 years ago. Downtown office. She handled your legitimate business operations." Memories crashed over Vincent like a wave. Jessica Santos, the young woman with the bright smile and incredible organizational skills. She'd worked for him for over a year, never asking questions she shouldn't ask, never curious about where certain money came from. A perfect employee. Then one day, she stopped coming to work. The news said she was killed in a home invasion. Wrong place, wrong time. Vincent had sent flowers to the funeral, a white arrangement with condolences. He'd even sent money to her family, a gesture of respect for a valued employee. Then he'd moved on with his life, his work, his forgetting. "I remember," Vincent said heavily. "The home invasion. I sent flowers." Maria turned back, and in her eyes blazed a fire Vincent recognized instantly, the fire of hatred, of pain ripened into purpose. "It wasn't a home invasion," Maria's voice was cold as tempered steel. "The DeLuca family killed my sister. Franco DeLuca gave the order. His men carried it out." She paused, swallowing hard as if the next words were glass shards in her throat. "They tortured her first. For 3 days. They wanted information about your operations, your money flows, weaknesses they could exploit." The room seemed to shrink. The air grew thick. "She didn't say a word," Maria continued, voice trembling but resolute. 3 days of torture, and she never breathed a syllable. Not because she was loyal to you, but because she knew if the DeLucas got that information, they'd come for you. And if they came for you, they'd find your children. Maria's voice cracked. She died to protect Marcus and Lily, 2 children she'd never even met. Vincent felt his knees weaken. A woman he barely remembered had endured hell and death to protect his children, while he'd sent flowers and moved on. "You came here for revenge," he said. Maria placed her hand on the screen, finger gently touching her sister's face. "I came here to find the truth," she replied. "When I discovered who was behind Jessica's death, I made a plan. Infiltrate Vincent Kane's life. Gather evidence. Then destroy him." She turned back, looking straight into Vincent's eyes without fear. "I thought you were a monster. Thought you knew how my sister died and did nothing. Thought you deserved punishment as much as the DeLucas." Heavy silence hung between them. "But then I watched," Maria continued, voice softening slightly. "4 months living in this house. I watched everything. Saw you looking at photographs of Sarah with pain that couldn't be faked. Saw you standing in her old room for hours at night, talking to someone who wasn't there." She stepped closer. "I saw your children waiting by the window every evening, hoping their father would come home early. And I saw Isabelle systematically destroying them while you drowned in guilt, completely unaware of the hell unfolding under your own roof." She moved within arm's reach. "You're not a monster, Vincent Kane. You're a broken man trying to survive. Just like me." "So what do you want now?" Vincent asked. Maria looked toward the chair where Marcus sat, hand still on his sleeping sister's shoulder. Her eyes softened. "I want Isabelle to pay for everything she's done," Maria replied, voice solid as a vow. "And I want to save the children my sister died to protect. That's the only thing I can still do for Jessica." Maria turned back to the laptop, opening more folders she'd created over 4 months. Each file appeared on screen like pieces of a horrifying puzzle Vincent had never imagined. First, screenshots of search history from Isabelle's personal computer. 6 weeks ago, his beautiful fiancée had typed keywords no one with good intentions would need: poisons that leave no trace. Substances causing natural heart failure. How to make death look like cardiac arrest. Dozens of search results. Medical websites and underground forums. All meticulously researched by Isabelle as if preparing for an important exam. Maria clicked to the next file. 4 weeks ago, a photograph of Isabelle leaving an estate lawyer's office in Manhattan's financial district. Beside it, a copy of documents Maria had somehow obtained, a new will for Vincent Kane, amended so Isabelle DeLuca would become sole heir if he and his children died. Vincent's signature at the bottom, perfect in every stroke. A forgery indistinguishable from the real thing. "She forged my signature," Vincent whispered. "She prepared everything," Maria replied, opening another file. 2 weeks ago, photographs from an upscale restaurant in Brooklyn. Isabelle sat across from 2 men Vincent recognized immediately, Carlo and Dante, notorious enforcers for the DeLuca family. Men Franco DeLuca only summoned when problems needed permanent solutions. In the photo, Isabelle was smiling, raising a wine glass as if celebrating something. Perhaps celebrating upcoming deaths. Then the final file. Yesterday, video from a security camera Maria had installed in Isabelle's bedroom. Footage showed a delivery man handing Isabelle a small package wrapped in brown paper. When Isabelle opened it in her private room, the camera clearly recorded what was inside: a vial of clear liquid, a set of medical syringes, and a small paper with handwritten text that Isabelle read and burned. "Oleander extract," Maria explained, voice cold as a scientific report. "Derived from a common ornamental plant. In controlled medical doses, it treats heart conditions. In the wrong hands, it's the perfect weapon." She paused, looking at Vincent with heavy eyes. "Small doses cause symptoms resembling stress, fatigue, nausea, irregular heartbeat. Doctors would think it was work pressure. Larger doses cause cardiac arrest. And by the time anyone suspects enough to request an autopsy, the poison degrades completely. No trace." Vincent felt nausea rise. He'd faced death many times, stared down gun barrels without blinking, ordered men killed without hesitation. But never had he felt this sick. "She was planning to kill us," he said, words coming out like a death sentence whisper. Maria nodded. "The children first. A tragic accident," perhaps a fall downstairs. Perhaps food poisoning. Perhaps drowning in the bathtub. Isabelle would weep at the funeral. No one would suspect the grieving stepmother. Her voice turned bitter. Then you. Slowly. The stress of losing your children would perfectly explain unusual symptoms. Heart failure from excessive grief. The tragic death of a father who couldn't overcome loss. Why? Vincent asked, though understanding was dawning. What would she gain? Maria closed the laptop. Everything. Your entire inherited fortune. The empire you built over 15 years. Business relationships. Shipping routes. Legal and illegal investments. She paused, letting each word sink in. And her father, Franco DeLuca, would absorb your empire without firing a shot. No war. No bloodshed. Just a funeral and a forged will. Vincent looked at his children sleeping in the corner. Marcus still awake, eyes wide in darkness, listening to everything though not understanding it all. Lily asleep with her head on her brother's shoulder. These two small souls had been marked for death by the woman he was about to marry. When? He asked, voice low like a predator's growl. When was she planning to strike? Maria looked at the wall clock. Tomorrow night. The documents are ready. The children won't be a problem. You heard that call. We have less than 24 hours. Vincent stood in the secret room, pale blue light from computer screens casting strange shadows across his face. His eyes fixed on the corner where Marcus sat, back against the wall, Lily's head resting on his shoulder. Both had finally fallen into exhausted sleep, their young faces relaxed for the first time in hours. In their dreams, perhaps they didn't have to be afraid. In their dreams, perhaps they were still normal children with normal lives. Vincent knew he had two choices. The first, war. Call his men, mobilize his forces, confront the DeLuca family head-on. He had enough firepower, loyal soldiers, connections to turn New York into a battlefield. But war meant blood. Meant death. Meant stray bullets and explosions that didn't distinguish between adults and children. His children would be caught in the middle. The second, run. Leave New York behind. Leave the empire he'd built over 15 years with sweat, tears, and blood. Leave behind the identity of Vincent Kane, the name that made people tremble, that carried power and respect. Become nobody. A ghost vanishing into the night. Maria watched him in silence, letting him wrestle with thoughts. Then she spoke, voice gentle but certain. I've already prepared everything, she said. A car is waiting in the parking garage on sublevel 2. Enough cash to live comfortably for years. False identities for all four of us. And a safe place no one, not even the DeLucas, can find. Vincent turned to her, eyes narrowing. You planned an escape for me. Since when? I planned for every possibility, Maria replied, unflinching under his gaze. Including the possibility that you're a good father trapped in a bad world. Just as my sister believed. She paused, eyes softening as she looked at the sleeping children. Jessica told me about you. How you called your children every night, no matter where you were. The family photo you always kept on your desk. She believed you didn't belong in this world. And I prepared for the chance she was right. Vincent looked down at his hands. The Glock still rested there, its handle familiar as part of his own body. This weapon had solved all his problems for 15 years. An enemy threatened him? The Glock solved it. A partner planned betrayal? The Glock solved it. Someone threatened what was his? The Glock always had the answer. It was the only language he knew in this world. The language of violence. Of power. Then he looked at Marcus and Lily. Two small figures curled into each other in sleep, seeking warmth and safety from one another because they couldn't find it from adults. If I run, Vincent said, voice dropping to a whisper, I lose everything. The empire. The power. Everything I've built. Maria stepped closer, standing directly before him. If you stay, she replied without hesitation, you lose them. 2 choices. 1 decision. And Vincent Kane, the man who'd never hesitated before any life or death decision, for the first time in his life felt his hands trembling. He looked at the Glock one last time. The cold weapon gleamed under screen light, a reminder of the man he'd been, what he'd done, the blood on his hands that would never wash clean. Then Vincent did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He removed the gun from his body and placed it on the table with a soft sound, metal touching wood, power touching surrender. He pulled his hand back, leaving the Glock lying there like a piece of the past he was abandoning. We go, he said, voice solid as steel. Right now. 3:47 a.m. The wall clock ticked each second like a countdown to the end of the world. Maria woke the children gently, soft whispers pulling them from brief sleep. Marcus opened his eyes immediately. Ingrained alertness meant he needed no time to become fully awake. Lily took a few seconds longer, small eyes opening with confusion before recognizing her father beside her. We have to go now, Vincent said to the children, voice gentle but unable to hide urgency. No noise. Do everything Miss Maria tells you. Understand? Marcus nodded without protest. Lily only looked up at her father and raised her arms to be carried. Vincent lifted her, arms holding her small body tight against his chest. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck, head resting on his shoulder as if it were the safest place in the world. Vincent swore he'd make that true. Maria led the way through the secret corridor, footsteps making no sound. Marcus held her hand tightly, small fingers wrapped around the woman he'd called the housekeeper just hours before. They moved through narrow passages and spiral staircases Vincent never knew existed, descending deep into the building until they reached a heavy steel door. Maria entered a code on the keypad. The door opened with a soft click. They stepped into an underground parking garage Vincent had no idea existed beneath his feet. The car waiting in the corner wasn't Vincent's gleaming black Mercedes. Not the BMW or Audi he usually drove. It was an old Honda Accord, silver paint faded, a few dents on the bumper. The kind of car people see hundreds of times daily and never remember. The perfect car for disappearing. Maria sat in the driver's seat. Vincent placed Lily in the back, then sat beside his daughter. Marcus climbed in on the other side, immediately pressing close to his sister. The engine started with a soft hum. The car rolled out through an exit Vincent never knew existed. They drove through Manhattan in the night. Familiar streets drifted past windows. Buildings Vincent owned. Restaurants where he'd negotiated million-dollar deals. Street corners where he'd built his empire from nothing. City lights flickered in the rearview mirror, and with each mile traveled, the past receded further. Vincent Kane was dying. Not by bullet or blade, but by choice. He was burying with his own hands the man he'd been for 15 years. 30 minutes after leaving the penthouse, the phone in Vincent's pocket vibrated. He pulled it out, screen glowing in darkness with a familiar name, Isabelle. He looked at that name for several seconds. Thinking of her smile. Thinking of sweet words she'd once spoken. Thinking of how she'd made his daughter kneel and call herself worthless. Then he pressed decline, powered off the phone, removed the SIM card, and threw it through the half-lowered window. The small plastic piece vanished into the night, carrying with it the last thread connecting him to his old life. They were on the highway heading north when Maria glanced in the rearview mirror, eyes suddenly sharpening. We have a tail, she said, voice strangely calm. Vincent turned to look behind them. 2 black SUVs were following, headlights blazing, distance shrinking. He recognized the type, the black Escalades DeLuca men favored. How did they find us? Vincent asked, hand instinctively reaching for his hip where the Glock usually sat, remembering he'd left it behind. Isabelle certainly put trackers in your car, your phone, possibly your clothes, Maria replied, eyes never leaving the mirror. But they're tracking devices, not us. They didn't expect us to switch cars. Maria pressed the accelerator. The aging Accord roared as if awakening from long sleep. She turned right sharply, plunging into a narrow road between warehouse buildings. Another left. Another right. She drove like someone who'd studied every road, every alley, every shortcut in this city. In the back seat, Marcus held his sister tight, his small body shielding Lily like a human shield. He didn't cry, didn't scream, only held her and closed his eyes, lips moving in what might have been prayer. Lily covered her ears with tiny hands, eyes squeezed shut, trying to block out the world outside. Maria hit the brakes, turned into an underground lot, killed the lights, and stopped in darkness. The two SUVs roared past outside, headlights sweeping but not detecting the Accord hiding in shadows. Engine sounds faded and vanished. They waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. No one spoke, only the sound of 4 people breathing and hearts pounding. Then Maria started the car again, drove out, and headed north. Toward Connecticut. Toward freedom. Vincent looked out the window as New York slowly disappeared behind them. His empire. His power. The man he once was. All receding with every mile. And he didn't look back once. 5:30 a.m. The eastern sky shifted from black to gray, heralding a new day. Maria stopped the car before a small house in the suburbs of Hartford. A one-story home with weathered siding and a lawn needing mowing. Unremarkable to the point of being invisible. That was exactly what they needed. The house sat among dozens of identical homes on a quiet street where neighbors left for work early and returned late. Where no one cared who lived next door. Maria led them inside through the back door, a key hidden under a withered flower pot as if waiting there for months. Inside, Vincent looked around and understood Maria had been preparing for this moment for weeks, perhaps months. The refrigerator was full of fresh food, items recently stocked based on expiration dates. The closet had clothes in sizes for adults and children. On a small desk sat a stack of documents, new identification papers, fake birth certificates, and a laptop already set up. She'd planned for everything, including the possibility he wasn't the monster she'd imagined. The children stood in the living room, eyes wide but empty with exhaustion. They'd been awake all night, fled through dark corridors, heard engine roars during the chase. Bodies screamed for rest, but fear was still too great. Lily stood clinging to her father's leg, tiny fingers gripping fabric, as if afraid he'd vanish if she let go. She looked up, large eyes still red from crying, lips trembling as she asked a question Vincent knew would haunt him forever. "Will Miss Isabelle find us?" Vincent knelt down, placing himself at eye level with his daughter. He saw fear in those eyes, fear of a 6-year-old who'd been taught monsters didn't live under beds but lived inside houses, wearing pretty dresses and high heels. "No one will find us here," he said in the gentlest voice he could manage. "I promise. We're safe now." Lily looked at him, eyes holding the same question Marcus had asked. The same doubt. The same fear of trusting and being betrayed. "You promise?" she asked again, needing to hear it once more to believe. "I promise." Vincent pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I won't let anyone hurt you anymore. No one." He led the children to a small bedroom at the hallway's end where 2 single beds had been prepared with clean sheets and pillows. Marcus and Lily lay down, but eyes remained open, staring at the ceiling as if waiting for something terrible. Vincent sat beside the bed, hand gently stroking Lily's hair. Then, from somewhere he couldn't name, an old melody returned to memory, the song Sarah used to sing to the children every night, the song he thought he'd forgotten, buried with the pain of losing his wife. But tonight, in this strange safe house, the words found their way back. He began to sing, voice not as smooth as Sarah's, but the melody was right. Lily closed her eyes almost immediately, as if the song were a key opening the door to sleep she'd been forbidden to enter for too long. Marcus relaxed too, shoulders lowering, clenched fists slowly uncurling. When Vincent thought both children had fallen asleep, Marcus suddenly spoke, voice small as breath in darkness. "Papa." The boy opened his eyes, looking at his father with guilt-filled eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Miss Isabelle. I was scared." I thought if I told, she'd send us away and you'd never find us. I'm sorry. Vincent felt his heart seize. His son, 9 years old, was apologizing for not being able to save himself, carrying guilt for what adults had failed to do. You have nothing to apologize for, Vincent said, voice trembling. He took his son's small hand, held it tight. Listen to me. Nothing in this is your fault. Nothing. He paused, swallowing pain rising in his throat. I'm the one who should apologize. I wasn't here. I didn't see. I left you alone with her. That's my fault. Only mine. Marcus looked at his father for several seconds, then nodded softly. And for the first time in months, the boy allowed himself to close his eyes without fear. When both children had sunk into sleep, Vincent remained sitting there, watching them in faint dawn light peeking through curtains. These two small souls had endured hell in silence, learned to survive by trusting no one, carried invisible scars that might never fully heal. And he, their father, had known nothing. Night fell over Hartford in silence. The small house sank into darkness except for weak yellow light from the kitchen, where Vincent and Maria sat facing each other at the old wooden table. 2 cups of coffee had gone cold between them, neither bothering to take another sip. The children were sleeping soundly in the next room, the first sleep in months not haunted by Isabelle's ghost. The silence stretched, but wasn't heavy. It was the silence of people too tired for words, who'd been through too much in one night. She believed in people, Maria suddenly spoke, voice soft as breath in the quiet night. Jessica. Even working in your world, she still saw light. She told me about you. How you treated employees. How you talked to your children on the phone every night. Maria paused, gaze fixed somewhere far away. She said you weren't like the others. You had something they didn't have. Vincent looked up, tired eyes meeting Maria's gaze. What? A faint smile crossed Maria's lips, sad, mixed with nostalgia. She called it a crack. She said people like you, people who've lived in darkness too long, usually become hard as stone. But you had a crack where light could get in. Where your true self was still alive. She turned to Vincent. I didn't believe her. I thought she was naive. But tonight, when I saw you kneel before your children, when I heard you sing them a lullaby, I understood what she meant. Vincent said nothing for a long while. He thought about Jessica, the young woman with the gentle smile he barely remembered. She died to protect his children, and he hadn't even known until tonight. Sarah saw it too, he finally spoke, voice dropping to a whisper. She saw that crack and tried to pull me out. Every day. He paused, memories of his wife rushing back like tide. She wanted me out of this life. To leave New York. To leave everything. We had a plan, sell everything, move to Vermont, buy a small farm where no one knew what the name Kane meant. Live normally. Raise the children. Grow old together. Maria looked at him, waiting. What happened? Vincent closed his eyes, old pain rising as if it never faded. She died before I could follow through. Car accident. At least that's what I thought until now. He opened his eyes, looking down at hands that had done terrible things. And I sank deeper instead of climbing out. I thought if I built an empire large enough, strong enough, I could protect my children. I thought power was the only way to keep them safe. A bitter laugh escaped his throat. But while I was building my empire, I abandoned the very people I wanted to protect. Silence returned, but this time carrying the weight of words just spoken. 2 people sitting in the small kitchen of a safe house. 2 souls shattered by different losses but sharing the same pain. Maria had lost her sister. Vincent had lost his wife. Both were trying to find meaning in tragedy, trying to turn grief into something not entirely meaningless. No one said another word. There was no need. In the darkness of the small kitchen with cold coffee between them, Vincent and Maria simply sat there. No need to fill emptiness with hollow comfort. No need to pretend everything would be all right. Then their eyes met. Not a look of passion or desire. Not the gaze of two people seeking comfort in each other's arms. This was a look of understanding, two people who'd touched the bottom of pain and realized they weren't alone. Maria saw in Vincent's eyes the guilt of a father who'd failed. Vincent saw in Maria's eyes the loneliness of a sister who'd lost half her soul. There was no kiss, no hands touching. Only two gazes meeting in darkness and understanding. Understanding the pain. Understanding the loss. Understanding why they were here in this small house on a cold Hartford night. And sometimes that understanding is more intimate than any touch. The next morning, Hartford's sunlight filtered through thin curtains, waking Vincent from restless sleep on the old sofa. He hadn't dared sleep in a bed, hadn't dared move more than a few steps from the children's door. Maria had been awake earlier, preparing breakfast in the kitchen with gentle movements so as not to wake the children. Vincent stood, stretching aching muscles, and faced a truth he'd been avoiding: he couldn't run forever. Isabelle and Franco DeLuca had resources, people, the power of an entire criminal empire. Sooner or later, they'd find him. And when that happened, no safe house could protect Marcus and Lily. He needed help. From someone who could stand against the DeLucas without being crushed. Vincent picked up the burner phone Maria had prepared and dialed a number he'd memorized 20 years ago, Detective Robert Chin. They'd grown up together in Queens. Two poor kids dreaming of escaping dirty streets. Then life took them in opposite directions. Vincent chose darkness, building an empire from blood and money. Robert chose light, becoming an NYPD detective who spent his life hunting people like Vincent. But between them remained a strange thread, a friendship from childhood neither could completely sever. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. Vincent Kane calling me at 7 in the morning, Robert's voice came through, hoarse from just waking but still sharp. Is someone dead or about to die? My children, Vincent replied, voice heavy. If I don't act. Silence on the other end. Then the sound of Robert sighing. Tell me. And Vincent told him everything. From coming home early to the scene of Isabelle making Lily kneel. From the videos Maria had recorded to the phone call about documents. From the oleander poison plan to the truth about Jessica Santos's death. He told it without hiding, without justifying, without trying to make himself look better than reality. He spoke like a man standing at an abyss's edge with nothing left to lose. Robert listened without interrupting. When Vincent finished, silence stretched for several seconds. Then Robert spoke, voice serious. The NYPD has been watching the DeLucas for 6 years, Vincent. Franco DeLuca is at the top of our target list. But the old man's careful. Leaves no traces. We know what he does, but we don't have evidence strong enough for court. Robert paused. We need evidence. I have evidence, Vincent replied immediately. Video of Isabelle abusing my children. Documents about the poisoning plan. Search history. Call recordings. Photos of her meeting with DeLuca enforcers. Enough to bury the entire family. And you'll have to testify, Robert said carefully. Against the DeLucas. He paused. And against yourself. Vincent looked toward the bedroom where Marcus and Lily still slept. 2 children who'd endured hell because of his absence. 2 children he'd sworn to protect at any cost. I already lost everything that mattered once, Robert, he said, voice low but unwavering. When Sarah died, I thought that was rock bottom. But I was wrong. Rock bottom is when my daughter kneels and calls herself worthless. Rock bottom is when my son sees his father but doesn't dare run to him. He drew a deep breath. I won't lose again. No matter what it costs. Silence stretched. Then Robert spoke, voice softening slightly. I'll be in Hartford this afternoon. And Vincent, don't go anywhere. 6 months later. Autumn painted the streets of Burlington, Vermont in gold. Maple leaves drifted onto sidewalks, and wind carried the first chill through rows of trees changing colors. At 421 Pine Street, a modest two-story house with a white fence and a small flower garden in front. Life unfolded so normally it was almost boring. And that was exactly what those living there wanted most. David Miller stood before the 7th grade classroom at Burlington Middle School, holding a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird in his hand, eyes resting on attentive student faces. He wore a light blue shirt tucked neatly into slacks and black-framed glasses. No one looking at this gentleman could imagine he'd once been Vincent Kane, the notorious crime boss of New York. When the bell rang and students gathered their books, David remained seated alone, gazing at vacant desks and wondering if this was the life Sarah had once dreamed for him. He drove his old Toyota home through peaceful Burlington streets where neighbors waved to one another and children rode bicycles along sidewalks, so different from New York. When David opened the door, the scent of cooking filled the air. Anna Miller sat at the kitchen table, hair loosely tied, reading glasses slipping down her nose as she graded elementary school tests. She looked up and smiled naturally. "One of my students wrote that her dad can fly because he's a superhero," Anna said, voice mixing annoyance and amusement. "I don't know what grade to give that." David laughed, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Give her high marks for imagination." In the living room, Michael sat on the rug working on homework, face serious. The boy was 10 now, taller and thinner than 6 months ago, but his eyes no longer carried that frighteningly aged gaze. Emma sat beside her brother, not doing homework but drawing with her new crayon box. David stepped closer, looking over his daughter's shoulder at the picture, 4 people standing before a house, holding hands, all smiling beneath a golden sun. "Who's this princess?" David asked, though he knew the answer. "It's us," Emma replied proudly. "The Miller family. I made the sun really big because our house always has sunshine." That night they ate dinner together around the oak kitchen table. Spaghetti with tomato sauce Anna had cooked, not perfect like meals from a private chef, but better than any dinner in that cold penthouse. After dinner, David read to the children before bed. Harry Potter, Chapter 14. Michael had heard it many times but still loved listening. Emma curled beside him, eyes heavy with sleep yet struggling to stay awake. The scars were still there. They didn't disappear with a new address and name. Michael still had occasional nightmares. On nights when he screamed in sleep, David would rush in, gather his son into his arms, whisper that everything was over, that he was safe now. Emma still startled at loud noises. A slamming door, a sudden dog bark could freeze her in terror before she remembered she was no longer in New York. Anna still checked door locks 3 times every night, still glanced over her shoulder on the street, still carried pepper spray though Burlington was one of America's safest cities. And David still woke drenched in cold sweat at 3 a.m., still heard Sarah calling his name in dreams, still saw Lily kneeling on carpet every time he closed his eyes. But they were healing. Slowly. Day by day. Every breakfast together was a small victory. Every child's laugh was a step forward. Every night they slept safely in their little house on Pine Street was a reminder the past didn't have to define the future. Autumn night fell over Pine Street in perfect quiet. David and Anna sat on the porch, 2 cups of tea in their hands, shoulders touching in the early season chill. The children slept soundly inside. Anna looked at the empty street. "Do you ever miss it? The power, the respect, knowing exactly who you were?" David didn't answer immediately. He looked up at the night sky where stars flickered, something he'd never had time to notice as Vincent Kane. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Sometimes I wake up and forget where I am. Forget who I am now. And for a few seconds, I remember the feeling of walking into a room and watching everyone fall silent." He turned to Anna, eyes softening. "Then I remember that version of me got Sarah killed. That because of that man, my son learned silence means survival." He took a deep breath. "This life is better, Anna. This quiet, this normalcy, watching our children laugh every day, coming home knowing no one's waiting to harm my family, that's a luxury Vincent Kane never had." Anna took his hand, fingers entwining naturally. They sat in silence, listening to wind rustling through trees. Then David reached into his pocket, pulled out a small black velvet box. Anna looked at it, then at him, eyes widening. "I never asked you the right way," David said, opening the box. Inside was a simple silver ring with one word engraved, "Together." "We got married for cover," he continued. "Because witness protection needed us to look like a family. But that's not why I want to be with you." He turned fully toward her, holding both her hands. "Maria Santos," he said, speaking the name like a secret prayer. "Or Anna Miller. The name doesn't matter. I love the woman underneath. Will you marry me? Truly. Not for cover, but because I love you. Because you saved me, saved my children, gave me the chance to begin again." Tears streamed down Anna's cheeks. She couldn't speak, only nodded. Then nodded again. Then she leaned in and kissed him, the kiss salty with tears and sweet with happiness. That night, lying beside one another in their small bedroom, David thought about the journey that brought him here. From criminal empire to middle school teacher. From luxury penthouse to ordinary home. From Vincent Kane to David Miller. From violence to peace. From collapse to healing. He reached for the locket on the nightstand, the only thing from his old life he still carried. Inside were 3 photographs, Sarah on the left, her gentle smile forever frozen. Vincent in the center, an old photo from before everything shattered. And Maria on the right, the steady gaze of the woman who'd given him reason to keep living. The past, the present, and the future. 3 pieces of one life. "Some scars never fade," he whispered into darkness, fingers brushing the locket. "But in the right hands, they become proof of survival. And survival is simply another way of speaking about love." Outside, Burlington slept beneath the quiet autumn night. Stars shimmered in the sky, indifferent to tragedies and triumphs below. And inside the small house on Pine Street, a family built from brokenness dreamed of the future. A future where the past was only a distant shadow. A future where children once called worthless would grow knowing they were loved. A future where love, even arriving late and after immeasurable pain, could still bloom. The greatest lesson this story offers is the value of family and the power of choice. Vincent once had everything: power, wealth, respect. Yet he nearly lost what was most precious because he wasn't there when his children needed him. Make time for your family. Listen to your children. Remember that no success is worth it if you lose the ones you love. If this story has touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next emotional stories. Don't forget to like and share this video with people you love, because sometimes a single story can change how we look at life. Leave a comment below so we can connect through these stories. Thank you for your time today. We wish you good health, joy, and daily peace. Always cherish the people beside you. They are the greatest treasure you'll ever have.